Hello. Welcome to American Business English. I'm your host, Russ Fast. This is program 25. As most of you know, these lessons are based on a video course developed by Pace International, headquartered in Portland, Oregon. The textbooks for this course contain the printed version of all the interviews, interacts, role plays, and conversations in the video lessons. This is the book we're using for this part of the course, American Business English, Volume 3. Well, let's get started with today's lesson. In our last program, we finished Case Study 8, and today we're moving on to Case Study 9. The topic of Case Study 9 is telemarketing. That is, doing sales and marketing by telephone. Are you ready to begin? Good.
In Case Study 9, we'll visit See First Trading, a telemarketing brokerage firm. We'll see how GO bonds are bought and sold, talk to a bond broker about his job and his customers, and watch some pension planning experts in action. Finally, we'll get some advice on using English in specialized work situations. GO bonds.
We can get a good idea of how telemarketing works by seeing how it's done at See First Trading. Right now, Mark Rogers, a stock and bond broker at See First Trading, is on the telephone talking to one of his clients. To get some language practice, let's pretend we're one of Mark's clients, named Mr. Johnson, and that we have a message to call him. I'll talk on the phone to Mark first. Then it'll be your turn.
Okay. It's going to be just a minute. Check. Would you mind holding? All right. Thank you.
He's on the line now.
How are you doing today?
Fine, thanks.
Good. Well, last time we talked, you had mentioned you were going to be looking for some tax-free bonds, possibly in the 4 to 5 year area. And we found some investments here that I think fit the security and the needs that you're looking for. You being up in the Skagit County area, we just so happen to have some Skagit County, Washington GO bonds, and they're 6% due January 1 of 1989. They're selling right at par, so that means they would be yielding to you 6%.
GO? What's GO?
What is GO? Well, GO stands for General Obligation. That means these are voter-approved investments. And it's for like a school district and things along those lines.
So for every share, I get $100 back in '89.
Right. That would mean for every $100 you would mature it, that would be the investment price that you would have, $100. Correct.
Sure.
And if you were interested in $25,000, it would be $25,000 plus some accrued interest. Now, these bonds are also pre-refunded, which means they already have the dollars to pay the investor back, so you can't get more secure than that. You've got the money already there to pay the investor back, and they will come due in that 4-year time frame.
Okay, $25,000.
Okay, you'd like to do those $25,000?
Yeah.
Okay, just a second. Let me check with my trader, make sure they're there, and if they are, I should get those for you?
Yeah.
Okay, just a second.
Certificates are 100%.
Linda? Can I have those 25,000 Skagits I was talking about?
Okay.
Okay, they're done? Okay, great, thanks. Mr. Johnson?
Yes?
Yeah, we got those for you. We still had some available, and we can get those for you.
Good.
Okay, now, as I mentioned, we'll be settling these next Wednesday because there's 5 business days in between the time you and I talk to the time that you need to pay for them. And I've got the registration just like we did last time, so I know how to make the checks.
An invasion of Haiti appears imminent. It's official, the baseball season is over, and the World Series is canceled. And a power outage blacks out air traffic control at the world's busiest airport.
First Business, Thursday, brought to you by Connecticut Mutual Life Insurance, the Blue Chip Company, and by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Now, here's Jim Nash.
Good morning. Barton Eckert is off today. President Clinton will address the nation tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern to explain why he feels an invasion of Haiti is necessary. First Business correspondent Dan Cush joins us with this report on the latest developments as American ships and troops prepare for action. Good morning, Dan.
Morning, Jim. It looks like an invasion is all but certain. A 16-ship U.S. Navy fleet with 20,000 American and Allied troops on board will soon be in position to invade Haiti. But first, President Clinton will have to make his case for the invasion to the American people tonight.
The president is expected to emphasize the brutal nature of the Haitian military dictatorship. It has reportedly killed 3,000 supporters of ousted President Jean-Bertrand Aristide since taking power 3 years ago. As part of invasion preparations, 3 million leaflets were dropped over Haiti's major cities by U.S. planes, announcing that President Aristide will soon be back and in power. Administration officials argue that the invasion is necessary to strengthen democracy in our hemisphere and prevent new waves of Haitian refugees on their way to Florida.
The president has to look at one fundamental issue. What is in the security interests of this country? That has to be the predominant theme, and that's what he's going to stress in his address to the country.
Facing strong bipartisan opposition on Capitol Hill, Senate Democratic leaders blocked a Republican move to vote on a resolution opposing the invasion.
We view this as a last-ditch effort to try and get the attention of the president and express the will of the American people, which is expressed in all the polls, that they don't want this invasion. And we're talking about the risk of American lives.
I'm very wary of an invasion. I don't think it has the support of the Congress of the American people.
Congress is off until Monday. If an invasion takes place, it's likely to occur before then. With polls showing more than 2/3 of the American people opposed to an invasion of Haiti, President Clinton has a tough selling job ahead tonight. Dan Cush, First Business.
Thank you, Dan. Well, it's over, leaving baseball broken-hearted fans from Boston to Seattle. For the first time in 90 years, a nasty labor dispute over a salary cap and revenue sharing has wiped out the World Series, an American institution that survived 2 world wars, the Depression, and a California earthquake. First Business correspondent Bob Beard reports.
There's an incredible amount of sadness. It is very hard, as I told the group on the phone today, to articulate to all of you the poignancy of this moment.
There is indeed no joy in Mudville this morning, no World Series, because of continued wrangling between the owners and players over money.
It's a business, and, you know, there's some things going on right now that both sides don't approve of, and if you can't come to agreement at this time in the season, it's getting pretty late to really hold a playoff in the World Series.
The cancellation of the remaining season will cost billions of dollars to the U.S. economy this fall, starting with team owners.
We deal with a short-term hit, no doubt, a direct hit that baseball has to assume, and hopefully the direct hit is not fatal.
Illich and others expected to lose between $500 and $600 million in revenue, from ticket sales to broadcast rights. The players are expected to lose $230 million in lost pay, some of that covered by a strike fund. The big broadcast and cable networks that air baseball are expected to lose up to $750 million in lost advertising money. And a new survey shows each major city where baseball is played loses an average $1.1 million for every home game canceled, with 1,200 workers losing their jobs at every ballpark. The human toll will stretch from these fans who tried to catch the Cubs in Chicago but couldn't, to the many small businesses that make their living off baseball, like Carlos Rodriguez's souvenir shop in the shadow of Wrigley Field, to Schaller Pump, a venerable watering hole for White Sox fans.
It'll hurt quite a bit, you know. Well, how many games were left that were canceled? About 20, 22, so it hurts, you know, hurts everybody involved.
From this souvenir store near Boston's Fenway Park to this Red Sox institution, the batter's box.
We can survive as far as hiring, you know, 16, 17 kids and giving them jobs that way.
Jim Courier, $12 million a year. Joe Montana, $11 million. Greg Norman, $8 million. They're in different sports, but they all have the same manager, Mark McCormick. he has been called the most powerful man in sports.
I would say that if powerful means that our companies are able to exert more influences on more sports than any other company or companies, I would say that's probably right.
McCormick saw the connection between sports and television and global marketing 30 years ago. Since then, he's made millions of dollars and a few enemies along the way.
He's a guy that if you don't go along with him, he's going to see what he can do to squash you.
And when I was a kid, everybody hated the New York Yankees. And I like to think that we're kind of the New York Yankees that, you know, people present success.
How did Mark McCormick become the Babe Ruth of sports marketing? And my weekly feature, Unconventional Wisdom.
A beautiful skater is clubbed on the knee, periling her Olympic tryout. The associates of another Olympic skater are arrested. The motive? An Olympic championship can mean $10 or $15 million in endorsements. Wherever there's big-time sports and television, there's big money, sometimes astonishing money. A Fox network will pay $1.6 billion to televise football. And individual players get sums that seem like telephone numbers, complete with area code. Dallas Cowboys quarterback Troy Aikman, $50 million. New Jersey Nets forward Derek Coleman is offered $69 million and turns it down. Within living memory, the great baseball hitter Mickey Mantle was paid $100,000 a year, and the fans were outraged. How did this
Hello and welcome to Worldnet's Africa Journal. I'm your host, Maimuna Mills, and we're coming to you live from our studios in Washington, D.C. Today, Thursday, September 15th. When talking about Africa, conflict resolution has become the key focus of discussion. Rwanda's horror, Somalia's unresolved conflict, Liberia's continuing saga, and other tense situations on the continent more than justify this examination. A key part of the analysis is how African countries resolve their conflicts. Peacefully, of course, but more specifically, who can and should be involved, in what manner and to what degree. Today we'll look at the role of international organizations in helping Africa resolve its conflicts. And for this discussion, I'm very pleased to welcome Cliff Kupchan. Cliff is the staff director of the U.S. House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa. We also have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Marley, who is the political military advisor to the Africa Bureau at the U.S. Department of State, and Dr. Suleiman Yang, who is a professor of African Studies at Howard University. Gentlemen, welcome to Africa Journal. Glad to have you for a very important subject here. I'll start with you, Cliff, if you don't mind. The question we have posed, who should be involved in conflict resolution in Africa, and how should it be done?
I think many Americans are thinking now that Africans increasingly have to resolve African problems. The role that the U.S. can play, the role that the UN can play, is limited by political reasons. And so we're looking to increase Africans' own abilities to resolve conflicts and to prevent conflicts before they happen.
But you wouldn't think then the Africans themselves, their role would not be limited, also inhibited by political reasons?
Certainly all countries have their own domestic constraints. But we think that there's potential and a need for Africans to become more empowered to resolve their own conflicts.
Right. But Anthony, we're still talking about the political reasons. In the case of Rwanda, a neighboring country had offered to help in resolving some of the issues or in acting as a mediator. And one of the Rwandan faction rejected it because they thought that that country wouldn't be as objective or as impartial as it should be in the case of a mediator. What do you think?
Without being specific on that case, there is always a concern in a conflict that a state bordering on the state experiencing a conflict may have a vested interest in the outcome, the specific outcome, rather than being truly neutral. Africa as a continent is large enough and as a region is varied enough that it's readily possible to find truly neutral states somewhere within the region. One of the limiting factors, though, that goes beyond the political concerns is resource constraints. And that's a very real constraint on Africa's capacity to date, and one area in which the international community can be of assistance.
Right, thank you. Suleiman, Anthony talked about resources. Do you think that's the only impediment to Africa's forces helping in resolving conflicts on the continent?
Yeah, I think resources are very critical, but most importantly, the domestic situation of African countries, the politics of scarcity. Many of these African countries